this is Editor's Take. I am Sakshi Batra and with me is Gaurav Choudhary. He's the Deputy Executive Editor of Moneycontrol, and we are going to be discussing about the IIP data that came out on Friday evening. Now that has come in disappointing. It is at a 21-month low. Thanks Gaurav for joining in. Now a contraction of 0.1% in the month of March is what we have seen. So, and this is the first time since June 2013. So how big a concern is this one?
Well, it only reinforces what we have been seeing from the shop end data. Say, for instance, if you look at car sales,
Yes.
They have been extremely sluggish over the last few months, and this piece of data actually reinforces the argument that we are in the middle of a slowdown.
Yeah.
In fact, the finance ministry also came out with a report recently and said and did indicate and in a very not so subtle hints that we are in the middle of a slowdown. This piece of data actually reinforces that. Also, the important bit here is that manufacturing, which accounts for about 75% of index of industrial production, and which is the closest approximation to measuring business activity in India, has also contracted. And importantly, capital goods and consumer durables have both contracted.
Sure.
In fact, capital goods have been contracting for the last few months. So capital goods output is a proxy to measure investment activity. So if it is contracting, it is a clear sign that investment has not been taking place. So companies are not adding capacity lines, and if companies are not adding capacities, it could be a sign that there is muted demand for the goods that they are producing. So this could be a sign of weakening demand in the economy, in the broader economy, and that is also being borne out by the figures of consumer durables. If consumer durables output is contracting, that means people are buying, it probably mirrors that people are buying fewer cars and fewer household consumer durable items such as televisions and microwave ovens and refrigerators. So clearly there is this is a sign of a sluggish spending, and the Indian economic growth story clearly is, the foundations of that is based on the on consumption spending. It's a consumption driven growth story as opposed to China, which is an investment driven growth story. So whichever government now comes to power after May 23rd, one of the first things that they have to address, and one of the priority is to boost consumption spending, and that is not going to be easy because consumption will happen only if prices dramatically fall, and also if there is more money in the hands of people to spend.
Right.
And it's a kind of a chicken and egg story, because people will have more money to spend only when their income goes up, and when their income will go up only when there is growth in the economy, when wages started going up. But the government, I believe, could use the full budget that it is going to present sometime in the first week of July to actually give some tax breaks, which will give more money in the hands of people to spend.
Absolutely. So I'll ask you about these three sectors, particularly manufacturing, consumer durables and capital goods, that have been showing some bit of contraction. If you see, manufacturing contracted 0.4% in March, capital goods sector contracted for the third consecutive month by 8.66%. Now consumer durables has been positive for 3 consecutive months, and after that it has contracted by 5.07%, and it is reflective of the urban demand, like you just said. So clearly this slowdown is being felt from both sides, from demand as well as investment. But what is the outlook over here? Just like you said that all eyes are on the government or the new government if they come out with measures by putting in more money in the hands of people. But what is the outlook really? Do you think the consistent slowdown that we have been seeing, and we've been speaking to all these automakers, they have been saying that because of the elections also they see some bit of slowing of the demand ahead of elections. So after that they are hopeful of the demand revival. Do you see this improving now going forward as well in the next month?
There are two things that we need two caveats that we need to flag here. One, IIP is output data. And please remember, in the month of April, there were more holidays than a normal month. So factories were shut. So there were holidays for, say, instance, Baisakhi, and there were elections there were elections on at least 4 days in the month of April. So all of these were holidays. So factories are shut. So output would not have taken place there. And then there were other festival-related holidays as well in the month of April. So that could be one of the reasons why output may have become very sluggish in the month of April compared to previous month. But coming to the point on slowdown, particularly related to elections, yes, it is a trend that we notice every national elections, every 5 years, that the electoral side, there is always uncertainty around the electoral cycle, and investment does not take place, and there is also consumption spending that kind of plateaus or flattens out, and that currently what we are witnessing is probably part of that syndrome that is playing out in the economy. And that is likely to continue in the month of May as well,
Okay.
because this data pertains to April. And in the month of May, the uncertainty around elections will only get lifted after the election results are announced on May 23rd. And if it's a hung parliament, the uncertainty probably will persist. So I don't see the slowdown or the slowdown that has occurred because of uncertainty on elections likely to get over until the last week of May. And then we run into June, which is usually, and a lot will depend on which way the monsoon rains behave.
Absolutely.
There are some forecasts that are saying that the monsoon can actually get delayed by a week or so.
Yeah.
Although the Met in its first forecast said it will be near normal. That is like every year, monsoon remains a big known unknown. And if the monsoon rains actually are not normal,
Yeah.
or come with a very long delay, that could affect the revival in the broader economy.
Right. Now, let me come to the growth in the 8 core infrastructure industries. That has hit a 5-month high of 4.7%. So, could this be looked at as a sign of respite, at least the infrastructure sectors are growing and they are going to offset the impact of the negative impact of manufacturing, capital goods and consumers that we have been seeing?
So that is one sign. But please remember, these are high frequency data. And what we see in 1 month may not persist in the next month.
Okay.
But the critical thing here to watch out for is how the manufacturing growth actually takes place over a period of 2 quarters.
Sure.
What we are seeing now in the manufacturing side, and if it is contracted by 0.1%, and also consumer durables and capital goods contracting, that may not be a good sign, because it could mean that green shoots are still far away.
Yeah.
And
will this also get reflected in the GDP growth overall?
Yeah, so in the first quarter GDP growth, which the data for which will come out in August, will clearly show up. This data will show up in the first quarter GDP growth. But before that, we have to contend with the Jan to March quarter. And the Jan to March GDP data will come out in the last week of May, and this will probably show up there.
All right. Thanks a lot then, Gaurav, for sharing all that insight with us. Well, not good signals for the economy for sure. There is a continuing slowdown. To what extent will this really show up in the GDP growth figures? It's what we'll have to wait and watch out for. Thanks a lot for joining us in this edition of Editor's Take, and do stay logged on to moneycontrol.com for more news and updates. Thanks for watching.